Hello, good evening. Today I'm going to talk about a little bit about legal translation and how legal translation is one of the what are the difficulties in legal translation and why legal translation is considered by some students to be a challenging area. The fact is that legal translation requires you to know the formula, because if it is formulaic, in other words, it requires a certain way of writing, which is quite legal, that can be read by lawyers only and by people in that community, professional community, like judges, lawyers, in both English and Arabic. And because of the fact that law language is quite specific in its terms, and because they have got dimensions, they have got certain meanings to them. For example, the word bond, what does it mean? It has a certain meaning to it, even though you say sanad in Arabic, but this kind of term you need to know what it means really. How do the legal systems some legal systems, how do they actually handle a bond? What is a bond? Of course, you need to understand what a bond is in the source language first, to know what it means and how do they use it and so on and so forth. So, I mean, it's like lease as well. What is a lease? What is a deed? Which is a kind of a contract. Any contract can be called a deed. And of course, these deeds, the awraq thubutiyya or sanadat, has got a different meaning to the word bond, which means sanad. But that's sanad mali. You can buy it from a company or from the bank issuing it for a company. That is what a bond is, and it's called sanad. Yet the word al-wathaiq, which is sometimes they are called deeds, specifically if you're buying and selling a house, they say to you, where are the deeds? And can you bring the deeds with you? There is also called, sometimes they call them the articles of association. In other words, the papers of the actual company. So in other words, what I'm saying here are terms that are well known in an area like in business, for example, because business is linked to legal, because when you see also a website, you'll find part of the website is talking about the properties, the ownership of the properties, intellectual properties, al-mulkiyya al-fikriyya, and you need to know what that means. Also liabilities, indemnities, ta'weed, liabilities, مسؤوليات المالية. All of these terms have got certain dimension to them. It's not just only a word which you find in the dictionary. You need to know how to use it. You need to understand it first in depth before you can use it. So you have to be very careful in legal translation or legal documents, whether it's in Arabic or in English, as to how they are used and where they are used, whether it's a family case like by a lawyer. And what's the difference between a lawyer and solicitor? A solicitor can speak in court, a lawyer cannot. And there's one in bar, which means that they can actually be in the court and speak to the judge and discuss matters with the judge during the trial. So in actual fact, even you need to know the ranks of different lawyers and which ones speak in court, which ones can't speak in court, who are entitled to speak and not speak. So choosing between a word like lawyer and solicitor, an attorney and prosecution, which is niyaba al-amma. So in other words, you need to know all these things. What do they mean? Niyaba al-amma, what does it mean? It means that it speaks on behalf of the law of the land, of the law on behalf of people, on behalf of public. And that's what you need to be aware of. You can't just translate it as a niyaba al-amma and that's it. You need to understand what niyaba al-amma means in Arabic and in English as well. Notary public also means al-katib al-adl. What does it mean, katib al-adl? And why is it notary public or is written this way? It's because legal language is based on formal language, using French and Latin, using words like commencement, which is from French, or other words that are used in Latin, of Latin origin, words that are in English used in Latin origin. Because legal language is actually full of formalities. When you say witnessed, for example, which is an archaic language used in legal documents, in legal contracts. So witnessed is an archaic language, yet it is used. Usually you have to write it in uppercase as well. When you say this contract or this agreement at the very, very beginning, in uppercase. In uppercase means all the letters of the word are written in a capital letter. So it is written in uppercase to say this is a new idea or new concept going in. And the legal language, for example, this is to certify, or when you are authenticating a document, يعني توثيق endorsing some documents, توثيق الوثائق. These are words that are not usually spoken in spoken language, in everyday language, conversational language. So it's a different language, it's a formal language. It's a language that's only lawyers and the professional community in the law area or law system understand. But the problem is, when you are doing translation for legal documents, is that you have got two legal systems which are quite different in their ways of speaking the language, of their own language. For example, in Arabic, they might speak it in a certain way. حضرة القاضي, for example, Your Honor. They don't say Your Honor Judge, for example, in English, but in Arabic, say حضرة القاضي. So, and then الشهود, witnesses, you need to know about registered or عن المأذون, ما هو المأذون, the registrar, authorized registrar, and so on. So it's really, when you are talking about marriage certificate or marriage contract, and the dowry means the al-mahr, but then in English, dowry is for the woman's family to pay, not to the men's family to pay. So yes, there is an issue of understanding the concepts themselves, understanding what they mean in each legal system, in the English legal system. And there is also English, there's Scottish legal system, there's a US legal system, so it's quite different. I mean, in US they might use the word attorney to mean al-muhami, محامي الدفاع, defense attorney. And then also المدعي العام, المدعي والمدعى عليه. Also it's respondent, petitioner, and respondent in certain familial cases. This is what they use. But then in other cases, they would say the accused in a criminal case. في قضية جنائية, for example. So penal court, for example, المحكمة الجزائية, where it gives punitive judgments, fines, and there are many different courts. So you need to understand the courts as well. You need to understand the systems of the courts in both systems, both law systems. In the English law systems, British, for example, or Canadian or Australian and so on, you need to understand the system. How many courts? What's the Crown Court? The Crown Court being the high court. What's the High Court and Crown Court and Magistrate Court? Magistrate Court, المحكمة الابتدائية, for example, in Arabic. But there is no Magistrate Court with the same system, with the same kind of judges in there. For example, Magistrate Court does not have a judge. It will have just an experienced lawyer attending or solicitor attending. So it's in the Arab world, المحكمة الابتدائية might have a certain setup as well, as opposed to محكمة الاستئناف, the appeal court. So appeal court is different. الطعن, and there's so many different courts which you need to understand in both languages, and what do they mean as well, and what is the difference between offense and the offender, the offense is not really a big crime. What is the difference between an offense and a crime? In English, for example, الجريمة ربما الحدث أو العمل البسيط في مجال يعني كالسرقة مثلا أو هذا هكذا. يعني هل هي جريمة؟ ما هي جريمة. Is it a crime or is it not a crime? So these are all these things. The capital punishment. What is capital punishment? الإعدام. But you know, capital punishment in US, for example, is gas chambers. يعني بالغاز. بينما الإعدام شنقا is execution by sometimes they say shooting or execution via hanging. By hanging. So there are lots of complicated matters which you need to understand as a translator. Not only just look at a document which is organized in a certain way, There is also the formula, as I said, the formulaic kind of text. When, in other words, it's written in a certain way. You cannot write it. You have to write it in a certain way. In the olden times, they were writing it on parches because they want to make sure that no margins are there, so that nobody can add anything in, you know, so that there will be a fraud or will be some sort of tampering with the document, changing dates and changing names and so on and so forth by leaving gaps or margins on the sides. So you see, legal document is supposed to be a kind of law through instructions. Through the instructions. So instructions through law, basically, giving instructions through law. And usually it lacks adjectives. A lot of adjectives are missing. For example, if you look at a contract for a marriage contract, you will not find, for example, saying something like a handsome young man is getting married to a beautiful young lady. You wouldn't see that. You would see a man, wife, name, address, and so on, and ID number, and date of birth, place of residence. So it's just only facts and figures, which are that is what is instructional text type. It's an instructional text type. It has instructions and they are done within the law. This is what the law is. You have to understand the law. So this kind of texts that are formulaic, in other words, they follow a certain formula, where they are more instructive in their instructions. For example, you say the tenant shall pay this amount. Okay? يعني يدفع المستأجر. Shall طبعا we don't translate shall because it's a model which is not which means must in legal terms, but we don't use must. We have to say shall to mean must. يدفع. So and then these all models in English, which is may, يجوز. For example, you say the landlord may enter the property. In other words, يجوز أو يجوز للصاحب العقار أن يدخل إلى العقار with written permission from the tenant. In other words, بعد موافقة prior written permission. Express permission, perhaps. These kind of expressions are actually expressions that are set and well known. Once you remember them, once you learn them, you don't have problem with that. You know, indemnity means ta'weed. It means that when you have damage to the property, indemnity is the word. So in other words, when you are translating a contract, you need to know that indemnity is ta'weed and not compensation. Because compensation can mean also only for in a different way, in different context, even though it means the same thing. Like, for example, if there is a flooding or in the house and you need some compensation, you have to have an item. An item means فقرة in the contract, a provision معناها شرط in the contract which dictates or which stipulates يشترط that. Of course, there is also certain expressions like provided that, شريطة أن. There are certain like each and every, kulla, and there are certain couplings of terms that come together and they mean one word, like remain, keep and remain, or maintain. The property يعني يسعى على صيانة العقار. Well, of course, premises, even though it's plural, it means عقار as well. So in actual fact, so maintenance of the property. Of course, the word maintenance again can mean different things in different contexts. Maintenance معناها النفقة in divorce case. When you talk about decree NSC, which means طلاق recoverable بائن, and there is رجعي وبائن. رجعي recoverable, irrevocable يعني بائن, ورجعي means you can go back to the marriage. This is in the Arabic. So you need to understand the Arabic system, the Muslim courts. How do they deal with these kind of expressions? What do they mean? Irrevocable, الطلاق البائن. And so these are really matters that are very important in certain law systems. And these different systems that are there. For example, in a marriage contract, you will find some very important point about whether the woman يعني هي ثيب أم هي بكر. Is she a virgin or she was married before? That kind of elements as well. So that's why legal system and legal languages needs to be understood by the translator first before you can go into deeper translations, deeper understanding of how to translate a legal document or a legal contract. So it's not really just only to understand that it's emotive in its diction, a legal language in English and Arabic, i.e. there is no emotions involved, unlike other kind of text types where they are expository, where there is a little bit of less detached and emotive, whereas in the legal contract there's no emotions as such. So this is really just briefly what some of the elements of legal which you need to understand. So you need to go and consult a lawyer in Arabic and ask them after you translate something, what do you think of this language? Does it mean anything? Of course it means a lot to the lawyer, because the lawyers know certain words mean certain things in their own profession, and you cannot just change them because you are just checking them in a dictionary, because each one means something completely different in their profession. So you need to understand their language, and that's the difficulty of learning legal translation. Also in English as well, you need to understand how English language works with the legal system, how formal it is, how being formal Latinated or Latin origin or French origin words needs to be chosen in rewriting. Now when you move on to the international law, then you are talking about or politics. In politics, of course, law is part of it. The International Court of Justice, for example, المحكمة الدولية العدل الدولية in La Haye, في La Haye, in Hague in English. You see the word Hague in English, the word Arabic La Haye for the court, International Court of Justice, which deals with political situations between countries, putting all these legal documents, which is approved, and it's linked to the UN, which is a political organization. Yet if you want to settle disputes between countries, يعني نزاعات بين الدول, you have to go to courts. And there is a criminal court, International Criminal Court, المحكمة الجنائية الدولية, or the International Court of Justice, محكمة العدل الدولية, and that is in Hague, and in Arabic it's La Haye. So you see, this is kind of a very, and this also, even when they write Dustur, the constitution in Arabic, for example, and constitution in English, also they use legal language to run the country. So there is a kind of format you have to follow. There is a kind of ways of doing the format and how to use the words in both languages. I hope that I've given a very brief summary of what is legal translation and what does it involve, what are the challenges that are involved in it. Thank you.